It's time to take a ride on the Steelers Afternoon Drive with our co-hosts, Alan Saunders and Zachary Smith.
Welcome into another episode of the Steelers Afternoon Drive. I'm Zachary Smith. That is Alan Saunders. Alan, what is going on?
Everyone's hurt. No, just, okay. Let me rephrase. Everyone that's hurt did not practice today, and I assume that the reaction is panicked running through the streets as the Steelers prepare for the Green Bay Packers, possibly without many of their best defensive players.
Yeah, so, I mean, I think it would have been ahead of the schedule that I had thought. If we were able to get Minkah back this week, it would have been kind of like a pleasant surprise from my point of view. And I'm not sure if we should read into the Cam Heyward thing at all, or, just coming back from the injury, just giving him some more time off. He doesn't need to practice, just be ready to go on game day or what. But Monty Adams, I didn't know what to expect there. I was kind of on the fence. Then the Elandon Roberts one really stinks to me, just because we're already without Cole Holcomb, as we've talked about several times, and he was part of, the depth that they had built up a little bit there, where you felt like they could alleviate that loss a little bit. Now without him in that room as well, Quan Alexander, Mark Robinson, and then maybe an elevation from the practice squad. One of those guys is going to have to be ready to go on Sunday, it looks like.
Maybe two.
Both. Yeah.
I think Michael Wilson and Tariq Carpenter are probably both going to come up if Roberts doesn't play. Talked to Tariq today. Nick Faribault talked to Michael yesterday. I think Terrell Austin basically said today that Michael's going to play. I think they probably both will if Roberts doesn't come back to practice tomorrow. Sure seems he got hurt in practice yesterday. And it's a knee, so could be. I mean, I saw him walking around today. It doesn't seem like he's not on crutches or anything like that. But it seems like it's a serious injury. If you go up to the previous video here on the channel, I went over and hung out with the inside linebackers at practice today, and it's a really cool video because you kind of see some good coaching from Aaron Curry, which I like to try to capture when I pull those out. But also you can kind of see, Mike Tomlin right there watching the inside linebackers like a hawk, and there's only 4 of them, which also stands out. So, I kind of get the feeling that 50 may be on the sidelines this week.
The wording that you used there, when you say serious, obviously, don't want to speculate here and say this is going to be like a multi-week absence, but you're just saying in terms of this game, right? You don't think he's going to be able to go.
Yeah. I mean, it certainly seems like this is not just a veteran getting a day off or, a minor tweak and, he's going to be fine. It seems like it's a real injury that's going to have, potentially real impacts. Now, if he comes and practices tomorrow, great. But I think, kind of leaning towards that feels unlikely to me right now. It seems like they're getting those 2 guys ready to play. In addition to Mark Robinson, obviously Quan is going to play a lot. Also talked to Keanu O'Neal today, and he said he's, ready to play linebacker if he needs to, and there's not that much of a difference between what he's been doing and what he would be doing if he was filling that role anyway. So there's a lot of options there for the team. Also talked to Nick Herbig. Now, he has not played any off-ball linebacker, but I did talk to him and Alex Highsmith for a story I'm working on about their 3 outside linebackers on the field together package and what that can provide. That's another option that they could try to break out this week as well. So they have options, but it definitely feels like, to lose Holcomb and Roberts in the same week would be a pretty significant blow to the middle of that, while also not having Minkah would be a pretty significant blow to the middle of that defense.
Yeah, the trickle down there is what's really interesting, because you just put a couple things in my mind. Could we see Keanu O'Neal do a lot of different linebacker things and then say, I don't necessarily want to see Miles Killebrew get run on defense, but whether it's Elijah Riley, Darius Rush was playing some safety in that game, that Thursday night game against the Titans. Could that be an option as well? Or you mentioned, the 3 outside linebacker stuff, which I hadn't considered. So,
I think
few ways they
Patrick
can go.
Peterson at safety is something that we've
Yeah.
seen some a little bit. Like if I was Terrell Austin, I was trying to like free up Keanu Neal to play some linebacker. I think that is probably the way I would go. Would be to play Patrick Peterson at safety and let Wallace and Porter do their thing. And then it seems like Darius Rush is going to play. Like that wasn't a 1 week thing. Like I think he's going to continue to be a part of their defense in multi, sub packages, nickel, dime. Like I think he's going to be out there a lot. I think we're going to see more and more of him. And man, like the results are really encouraging early. So why not? I think that's going to be part of the plan here too.
Yeah, and I think as he showed, 4 different alignments was wearing able to wear a couple different hats for that defense too. Like it's encouraging for sure that they already trust him at that level to throw him out there. Granted, how thin they got at certain spots is obviously going to kind of force their hand a little bit, but I think Darius Rush has also forced his hand with how he's looked in practice, obviously. As far as the other guys that are listed here, Montravius Adams, again, I mentioned I didn't necessarily expect Minkah back this week. I know Tomlin mentioned you could see him maybe return to practice later in the week. I wasn't necessarily expecting that. So between Montravius and then also like the Cam Heyward one, any worry there, but with either one of those or in terms of Sunday's availability?
Yeah, I would say Minkah, like even if he practices tomorrow, probably would not play this week at this point.
Yeah.
That would be my gut feeling. In terms of Cam, it just seems to me like they're just resting him and that he should be fine. I haven't gotten any wind that he suffered some kind of setback or anything like that. It just seems like they're taking it easy on him. And Adams, I kind of thought that, they initially listed him as questionable to return to the game. Kind of thought that he would be able to practice by now. Discouraging that he hasn't, but he's got one more shot at it if he comes out and has a full practice on Friday. It wouldn't surprise me if he is good to go. And then, the thing to watch there is, Keanu Benton played a ton while Adams got hurt on like the second or third defensive snap of the game.
Yeah.
So Keanu Benton played a ton last week. I expect that he probably will play a ton again this coming week, sort of no matter what. And then the only question will be, whether Armon Watts gets a hat or not will be kind of the thing to watch as to whether Adams plays or doesn't play. Man, Mont's been good, though. Like, I think he's a guy that a lot of people kind of wrote off as like a spare part. And, I really think that was like a guy they were trying to replace in drafting Keanu Benton. Maybe not necessarily for this year, but the future. Man, if Mont had been playing as well last year as he had been playing this year, I don't think they draft a nose tackle that early. Like, I think they would have been fine with Montravius Adams because he's been playing pretty well.
Yeah. They wrote him off, but he hasn't written back at least yet. Is what you're saying.
Yeah, maybe not totally. And also, part of Benton is like that's kind of a long-term thing where defensive linemen take a long time to develop. So the idea was that he could be a short-term upgrade at nose tackle and maybe a long-term replacement for Heyward or Ogunjobi. So it's kind of 2 for 1 there. Certainly not saying they would have crossed the position off, but I think they have good depth there because of the way Adams has been playing. Sucks to lose him, but I think they can handle it. It'll be an interesting test this week, too, because this is a team that is a little bit different on defense. And I think they were going to need those linebackers, man, because they play a lot of Aaron Jones and A.J. Dillon together. And it's a different look than you see every week. And I think it's one that the Steelers probably were going to want that 3 safety package for. The Steelers are probably going to want the ability to play a lot of those linebackers for. And, maybe they'll be forced to be a little bit more vanilla, or maybe they'll be forced to get into their bag of tricks and show us some new stuff that they haven't shown yet in order to not be vanilla, because I think a lot of the things I've leaned on probably aren't going to work just based on who is and isn't available.
Yeah. Speaking of writing off, a good portion of the fan base, I feel like, has already written off Kenny Pickett. And good news for them is the Steelers are amongst the betting odds favorites to land current Cardinals quarterback Kyler Murray, should they go a different direction in the draft and move on from Kyler Murray. You wrote about this today on the site. This is per Bet Online. This is their odds. that we're looking at here. I mean, what do we make it? Because we were having a conversation before we started recording about it. Like, I don't think where they're placed on this is necessarily ridiculous when you look at like the teams that are in front of them too. And you know, as much belief as you might want to have and hope you might want to have for Kenny Pickett, teams never really should stop taking chances until you find that franchise quarterback, right? So it's interesting for sure.
Yeah, I mean, so 9-1 odds, so like implied odds of 10% chance of this happening. So like not like anyone's saying like, oh yeah, this is definitely going to be a thing. But I just think if you look around, and maybe part of this is like having a national perspective, but if you look around, it's like, okay, from the 2021 quarterbacks, Davis Mills lost his job and got replaced. Zach Wilson lost his job and got replaced. I think there's another one.
Trey Lance.
In that group. Trey Lance, right? Like,
and it looks like Justin Fields
got traded. Yeah. I don't know what's happening with Justin Fields, but
right.
And then even from the 22s, even from Pickett's year already, Desmond Ridder, seems like Atlanta's given up on him. Tennessee already gave up on Malik Willis and drafted Will Levis after him, and it seems like Willis is never really going to get a shot beyond one half of one game to be Tennessee's starting quarterback. Like, patience at that position is not a thing in the NFL. And the Steelers are more patient than most, but it doesn't necessarily mean that they're going to give Kenny Pickett 3 years to figure it out. And even though I think he has improved this year and has shown improvement, he's still, between 25 and 30 in most passing stats. That's just not good enough. And the play beyond the stats, and we've talked about a ton on this podcast, hasn't been good enough either. And so I just think it's not crazy to think that the Steelers, I think most people are under the assumption also this offseason that, like, if things don't go great, they're going to fire Matt Canada. A new offensive coordinator might come in and be like, I can't work with this guy, or he's just not good enough, or he doesn't fit what I want to do. That's
hadn't
all
considered that.
That's all out there in the realm of possibility. But the Steelers fire Matt Canada and they go out there and let's say they pick their 10 or 5 to 10. I mean, these are guys who want to be offensive coordinator. 5 to 10 people walk in that room with Mike Tomlin and Art Rooney and say, I will take this job, but Kenny Pickett is not good enough to be a starting quarterback in the NFL, and I'm not going to let you tie me to him. Like, what? Okay, what happens then? And I don't think, based on what's happened so far, that's an unreasonable possibility. And so I just think, is it a good chance? No, but I don't think it's something that, like, so a couple of years ago, and we've probably talked about this on the podcast, but I don't know. There was like one of these odds where it's like Steelers among the favorites to trade for Deshaun Watson from the Texans, and I wrote an entire story that was just the word no. And it was just like, no.
I remember this.
It's not happening. I don't think that's where I'm at with this. I would say probably not, but like there are reasons to think this could happen. And, Kyler Murray's a good – okay. I would want to have Kyler Murray if I was an NFL GM. Like, I would want to try to get that guy, let Arizona eat some of that giant contract they gave him, and get a really good quarterback for maybe a little bit less than market value. Yeah, like, sign me up for that. Now, I don't know what the trade ask would be. Like, they can't be expecting to get a king's ransom for him. But I just think it's not likely, but it's not just, like, too dumb to talk about either.
Yeah, so the teams that are listed ahead of them, the Patriots, Titans, Giants, Falcons, and then in terms of where their odds are, it's tied with the Commanders. So again, when you put it into that perspective and look at where they are on this, that's why I don't think it's like egregious where they're positioned here, because you look at like QB needy teams, or maybe they have a guy.
Honest, like the Titans being second.
Yeah.
Like the Titans being second now kind of feels like, well, give me one more week of Will Levis doing what he's done the last 2 weeks, and I think that they probably start to drop. Like, I don't know. There's not that many teams that are, and like even like the Giants would have to find a way out of Daniel Jones's contract in order to make that work. That's going to be tough. I don't know. There are only so many good possibilities.
Oh, Well, you know what's interesting too on this is we were mentioning the 2021 quarterback class. Mac Jones is part of that too, and the
Yeah,
Patriots
there
are the
you go.
favorites here. And
Yeah.
3 of these teams have quarterbacks from the 2022 class with Kenny. Atlanta, Washington, and Pittsburgh. So
Yeah, and Tennessee,
it's
4.
yeah.
Yeah.
Correct.
So
Yeah.
I mean, I think it's. I just think it's. It would be an un-Steelers-like move. Let's acknowledge that. But
Yes.
I mean, I think they've shown a willingness to get out of their own mold recently, also. So let's not totally write it off. My expectation is that Kenny Pickett will be the Steelers starting quarterback throughout at least
Agreed.
most of the 2024 season. But it's like you said, it's an important position, and it's you're doing yourself a disservice if you don't keep looking at things.
Yeah, I mentioned that we want to get to at least one thing that I got here from the YouTube channel, but somebody asked us, and I missed this yesterday, but they asked us on X, and I thought it was worth bringing up too. This is from our guy, Joe Aber. I should have hit y'all up earlier, but curious if y'all think the Steelers should draft a quarterback in the 2024 draft, and what round would it be? And then he tagged us and said, y'all bring it. Thanks for the good content. Miles above most other sources.
Miles above, maybe.
He knows what he's doing. Yeah.
Miles above.
This is textbook right here in terms of how to ask a question for Steelers afternoon drive. And here's the thing is this wasn't asked in terms of like, should they take, and that's why he said what round. Like, so this could even be just getting another backup, like a younger guy on a cheaper contract. Obviously, Mitch Trubisky, a pretty highly priced backup quarterback. Mason Rudolph, they can, it seems like, just bring back whenever they want on a whim or do whatever they want with his contract, just year by year. But what's your position on this? Because I'm at least of the mindset that it's too important of a position, as I mentioned, to ever like stop throwing darts at. Why not at some point take a chance if you feel good about this class, whether it's early, whether it's in the middle rounds, whatever, to throw a dart at a guy and see if he does turn into something. I'm not saying that every guy that you draft in the 7th round or whatever is going to turn into a Brock Purdy or something, but what if they do? You know what I mean?
Yeah, no, I absolutely think they need to draft a quarterback this year. I can pretty much assume that Mason Rudolph will not be back. And look, they like Mitch Trubisky. They've gotten good play out of Mitch Trubisky. We've talked about how similar his numbers have been to what they've gotten from Kenny Pickett. But I think that they are paying him a lot of money to be a backup quarterback. If you ever get to a point where you're going to want, to pay Kenny Pickett big money, that's not going to work. So I think they want to be able to develop their own backup quarterback, regardless of whether or not that person becomes a starter. You're not going to draft a guy and be like, oh, his ceiling's a backup. But, if you could find that, I think that would be useful. Yeah, I think it's a need. I think they will look to draft a quarterback. I would say probably not before the 3rd day of the draft. But, I mean, I don't think it needs to be like a Chris Oladokin, like throw away the last pick of the draft situation either. I think they should invest real resources into the position and try to find. You mentioned Brock Purdy. I mean, like there are lots of those guys that were just drafted as a 2nd or 3rd option. Kirk Cousins was drafted literally behind RG3 in the same draft class. Was drafted to be his backup. I think there's plenty of examples of guys like that out there that you can find that it just makes it worth it to keep trying. Also, so much of the pre-draft process about like who you look at, like the Steelers were not looking at quarterbacks last year at all.
Yeah.
Every time if we teleport our brains to March, and Mike Tomlin is at the podium talking about a free agent they just signed, how often do we get we sat down with him before his pro day and I got to know him. And I remember seeing him at the combine. It was like, we really liked him and just circumstances didn't work out then, but now we got a chance to bring him back. I think just putting yourself in an organizational mindset that quarterback is a need. This is a position that we need to scout. This is a position that we need to be prepared to draft. Even if it doesn't end up happening, is an important thing for them to do this offseason.
Yeah, I think, the one guy that I thought about from this past draft class that I really liked as a mid-round guy, and obviously the Steelers weren't interested in quarterbacks like you mentioned, but like Jaron Hall, I really liked out of BYU, and I wish we would have gotten to see more of him in his debut because he looked really good in a small sample size before he got knocked out of that game too, and Josh Dobbs had to come in. But like he interested me. I think that's the type of guy that I'm talking about. A guy that's going to go in the mid-rounds, just adding a guy with some intrigue, whatever it is, that has some tools to the room. And
Tyson
again, on a
Bagent.
rookie contract. Tyson Bagent.
Also, Josh Dobbs, MVP. Can't think of a more fitting guy to be named MVP, the Nickelodeon most valuable player, than Josh Dobbs.
Yeah. Dude.
Can't wait to see who he slimes because it's going to be great.
Yeah, and what an awesome story, by the way. And there's another, mid-round pick that's made a name, made a name for himself and stuck around in the league. So I think he could be a good example of that as well. Let's talk about this Packers team that the Steelers are going to see on Sunday a little bit, though. Defensively, I think is really interesting because you could talk about the level of competition, but there's been a lot of talk about their run defense. But over the last 2 weeks, they're top 5 in run EPA against. So I feel like they've improved in that area a little bit. The injuries, I think, are something to monitor, though. Quay Walker didn't practice. He also didn't play last week. He hasn't practiced yet this week. Jair Alexander, who's been kind of in and out of their lineup with a back issue, is now also dealing with a shoulder injury that kept him out of practice yesterday. So I think that's something to monitor as well. We know about the status of their offensive line being banged up. They've kind of been like a makeshift unit, but been pretty solid. And then Jordan Love, obviously, who maybe had like his, second best game of his, of this year at least, last week against the Rams without Matthew Stafford. Should mention that as well. But what do you make of this Packers matchup, and where do you see some of the key matchups for this game?
Rashaan Gary is the guy that defense
yes.
should scare you. 52, plays mostly left outside linebacker or left rush end, and if they go to a 4-man front. Preston Smith, the guy on the other side, I believe. And then Lucas Van Ness was a first-round pick out of Iowa. So they got some depth in terms of edge rushing talent. That I think it will be a challenge more like a Cleveland or a Baltimore than what they've seen some of these last couple of weeks. It's going to be a real test for Broderick Jones in terms of his pass rush ability pass protection ability from the right side. I think more than we've seen so far. They're banged up on the interior as well. I'm not sure if they're fully healthy there, but they can stop the run. I think their secondary can be beaten. They're not a total defense, but they can force you to do things you don't want to do at times. And I think they definitely can get after the passer. I love their 3 edge guys. In terms of offense, it's just been really inconsistent. The Dobbs and Watson have both been kind of very. Watson was hurt, and then Dobbs has been inconsistent. Jaden Reed out of Michigan State's been kind of the one guy that's been there for them all year. The rookie who's the slot receiver. I really loved him at the Senior Bowl, and saw him a good bit at Michigan State. I think he's a good player. I think it's really about stopping the running backs, though. I mean, I think you got to get Jordan Love. If you get Jordan Love into uncomfortable down and distance situations, I think you win the game. And I think that, the running backs do that in a couple of different ways. Obviously, they can run the ball, but Jones is such a passing threat. I think this is a game where you can't let the 3-yard pass beat you. It's got to be catch and tackle quickly. Can't have missed tackles from your secondary. What Tom was talking about Joey Porter Jr. last year and saying, well, the reason they let him follow DeAndre Hopkins was that they knew that following DeAndre Hopkins meant he wasn't going to have to tackle Derrick Henry. This is a game where Joey Porter is going to have to tackle running backs a lot.
Yeah.
And, that hasn't necessarily been not just Joey, but really all their corners have not been great in terms of run support this year. I think that's going to be a key in this game, not just run support, but a short passing game. I think this is really a game where it's more about the short passing game than anything, and just keeping that bottle up and not letting that be big plays, not letting that be easy yards to stay in good down and distance, and be able to get to places where they can really let TJ and Alex Highsmith loose on that. No David Bakhtiari, pretty makeshift offensive line. I think the Steelers have a significant personnel advantage there if they can get Green Bay into obvious passing downs.
Yeah, I'm looking at the injury report actually right now. I just pulled it up. So, did not participate. Quay Walker and Jair Alexander, 2 days in a row for Jair missing practice. And then limited participation for pretty much everybody else, which includes Kenny Clark, Rudy Ford, Elton Jenkins, Aaron Jones, Josh Myers, Josh Neiman, John Runyon, and then Christian Watson, who's been dealing with a little bit of a back thing, was a full participant. So, yeah, pretty lengthy injury report, though. But a lot of those guys are limited, so you really don't know what to make of that. Jair Alexander, though, 2 days missed the practice in a row. That's pretty significant.
Yeah, and combined with Quay Walker, it's kind of the same thing the Steelers have going on in terms of like multiple sort of coverage defenders out at the same time, and how's that gonna
different levels.
Out?
Yeah. But yeah, for me, I'm looking at the Packers receivers, and like you mentioned, I don't know that they have like a true number one. Christian Watson's the guy that takes the top off. Romeo Doubs, though, has been targeted more on a per game basis. Yeah, so I don't even know. And then Jaden Reed's actually probably been the best of the three, most consistent in terms of when he gets.
He's definitely been the most consistent and the most consistently available. Like he's been the in terms of I think he leads them in receptions, and I think he's the guy that really maybe you worry about from a matchup standpoint. I'm not sure the Steelers slot corners have been great this year. I really think Reed's a good player. He's got great hands. They didn't use the tight end probably enough, in my opinion, but not really. They got the young guy there, the rookie.
Musgrave and Kraft. They got both, yeah.
Yeah. I don't think he's been a big enough part of their passing offense to really warrant attention. I think that's probably been a mistake on their part. But they do like playing both running backs, and so somebody's going to come off the field. That's kind of been what's happened there.
Yeah, and I mentioned Aaron Jones there, still limited practice participation with a hamstring injury, but fully expect he's going to go. He played a good bit in their last game against the Rams, and I wouldn't expect that to change in this one. Alan, I think that we got a really good YouTube comment that I wanted to bring up as well, and this kind of goes along with a lot of the talk that we've had recently in terms of the trenches of this football team. So this is from Kevin Woods. He said, Con and Weidl have said they want bully ball, rebuilding, starting in the trenches. The Steelers have been weak, though, overall, running and against the run. So offensive linemen, defensive linemen, you would think would be their first two drafted. Are they behind schedule in terms of this, in terms of adding to the talent via free agency or the draft, or is this what we kind of expected in terms of the replenishment of the talent?
I think you got to separate the two, right? On defense, playing without Cam Heyward obviously has made a big deal, but I think mostly their defensive issues have been about missed tackles behind the front group. Like, I don't think they're losing, down and distance running the ball because of the defensive line. I think they're, how much of their rushing yard against total is just like big plays because of missed tackles. It's a significant portion of it, especially early in the year. And they've been better the last few weeks, even though they've played in ETN and Henry. I mean, probably outside of
it's dropped from 140 to 133 over just two games. So
they played McCaffrey and they got killed, but it was again like a lot of missed tackles and a lot of big plays against these last. I mean, I think they've been better, and that's ETN and Henry are really good running backs, and they've played better. So I think they're getting there. And I don't think it was really the line's problem. I think Mont Adams has been above expectation, like we talked about. Keanu Benton's been above expectation. Cam Hayward when has been healthy. Larry, I think against the run has been fine. Maybe you think he could have some more to give in terms of pass rush, but I don't really think there's been a problem with the defensive line in run support. I think it's mostly been behind that the issues have propped up. Now the offensive line, they made it a focus this offseason, but really the only guy they added this offseason we've been seeing play is Isaac Seumalo. Broderick Jones is just getting into the mix. I think I've liked what I've seen from him so far, but I feel like that was more of a long-term project, that they were not you deal with offensive line in 10-year increments. Like, it's not like a focus on that this offseason was going to pay immediate and gigantic dividends this year. I do think that Mason Cole has taken a step back this year. I haven't seen maybe as much impact from Seumalo as we had hoped. And I think Chooks was taking a step back this year as well. And just sort of outside of his benching these last 2 weeks, I don't think he's been as good as he can be. So we'll see what happens. Another game with Braddock Jones, man. Nick Fairball talked to him today. Great quote from him. Asked about the running game. He had 160 yards rushing, and he said, "Hey, that's not good enough. I understand it's the NFL, but I'm from Georgia. I want 200 every game, or I'm not going to be happy." I thought that was good to see. I do think he could be an asset in that regard. I'm a little concerned about him in pass pro right tackle. He doesn't have that many reps over there. This is going to be a much bigger challenge than he faced last week. And he did kind of admit that he feels like he's more comfortable on the left side than the right side right now. So we'll see how they're able to help him with Rashaan Gary. Maybe this is a game we see a little bit more out of Darnell Washington at tight end instead of Connor Heyward, because blocking is going to be a bit more significant. And then we get Pat Freiermuth back in the mix. Hopefully next week. Pat's got his fingers crossed. He's been running off to the side this week. Expects to practice next week.
Yeah, he doesn't want to jinx it like he did last time and say he's coming back and then, have that type of setback. So smart on him to not actually throw the exact wording out there again. But
I love Pat. He's we were talking and he said, I was like, yeah, just in time to come back and solo block Myles Garrett on the outside. He was like, no. Don't sign me up for that, man. This is good.
Yeah, absolutely not. All right. Oh, I did want to mention too, there was one thing that I had missed yesterday. Somebody replied to you when you put out about us doing the Q&A, was about that Steelers Thursday night matchup against the Patriots. I believe it would have to be flexed. They would have to notify today about flexing out the week 14 Thursday night matchup. Doesn't look like that's going to happen. And the person basically asked, should it happen? Or should they stand pat? I mean, because if you look at primetime matchups, like especially this week, the NFL really hasn't used this flex yet. Like, I don't know what they're doing with these, but
no, I do not think they will flex the Steelers out of a Thursday night game against almost any opponent, and certainly not against the New England Patriots when you have a large fan base like New England's, and you have sort of that easy storyline candy of Mike Tomlin and Bill Belichick in the second half of their careers, both attempting to get back to where they've been with young quarterbacks. There's a ton of storyline there. It's two big fan bases. Like they're not going to get a better game than that for a Thursday. I expect that game to stay. I think in general they've been hesitant to overdo the new flexing powers, and they're probably waiting until late in the season to really, because they can only do it so many times. They're really probably waiting until late in the season to make the most impact possible. However, I mean, we just come off of, I put this on Twitter the other night, like it feels like we're being punished as a football audience. Like,
yes,
this will be like the Sunday night game was pretty good. But now since then, Monday night was just a total dog. Tonight, I mean, I'm Team Tyson Bagent, but like, there's not much to watch for. If you're
right.
4-1-2 man, you can hope Miles Sanders gets some run, but he's been kind of relegated to backup duty. And then, what is it like? What are the night games this weekend?
The Jets and Raiders are Sunday night, and then the Broncos and Bills are Monday night.
I mean, the Broncos did just beat the Chiefs recently.
And then the Broncos are on Sunday night the following week against the Vikings without Kirk Cousins. Josh Dobbs, though.
I gotta do something about this. Like,
However, 1 week from today, Ravens Bengals on Thursday Night Football.
I'm all in on that, and also we get the nice thing of for Steelers fans in Pittsburgh anyway. It's a Fox doubleheader while the Steelers are playing, and Fox has cross-swapped Browns-Ravens. So you will be able to flip over in commercials to Browns-Ravens during the Steeler game this week. So that's fun. You got that going for us, which is nice.
Well, you and I won't be able to, but yeah, if you're watching at home, they'll be able to.
I might see if I can get one press box TV on Browns-Ravens. I might be able to make that happen. Certainly in the press box cafeteria, one TV will be on Browns-Ravens.
Okay, there we go. Alan, other than in the press box on Sunday, tell the people where they can find you.
I practice tomorrow, but I don't recommend showing up. Online, you can find me at @Saunders_PGH, at PGH Steelers Now is the site's account, SteelersNow.com. That's where the words live. Read them so I can get paid. You want a subscription to SN Plus, get 10% off. Use the promo code Allen10 and get the best of the stuff from me, Nick Faribaugh, Derek Bell. That's it.
There it is.
Prediction
I
day
am
tomorrow.
Zachary. What is tomorrow?
Predictions.
Prediction day tomorrow. It will be prediction day tomorrow here on Steelers Afternoon Drive, as we do every single Friday. So we'll be back tomorrow for that. I'm Zachary Smith, PGH.
Last week we did it Wednesday. You can't make promises.
Oh, that's right. Yeah, and there's another Thursday game, like we just mentioned, against the Patriots.
And then they can get flexed into, I don't know, Monday.
Yeah, okay. So, all right, you're right. Whatever the last show of the week before the game is.
There you go.
There we go. I'm Zachary Smith, PGH, Rashaan Saunders, and myself. Come back tomorrow and take another ride with us on the Steelers Afternoon Drive.